Veronica and I had been childhood sweethearts for 20 years. Everyone assumed that after graduation, we would naturally get married. But just as I was preparing to confess my feelings to her, I was shocked to discover that she had already been secretly seeing someone else. She said, "Let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Alexander." During the day, she openly showed affection for him right in front of me. At night, she would deliberately tell me which hotel they were staying at. She even tried to force me to be the best man at their wedding. I forced a smile, turned around, and left without saying a word. I immediately began dating Sarah and cut off all contact with Veronica. I never expected that later she would appear in front of me, crying and accusing me. "We were just playing a game. Daniel, how could you betray the bond we've shared for 20 years?" My mother called me again, for what felt like the 100th time that week. "Daniel, the Law family is on the verge of collapse. If we don't form a marriage alliance soon, we'll go bankrupt." She continued, "I know you and Veronica grew up together. You like her and want to marry her, but—" Before she could finish, I interrupted her. "Mom, I'm willing to come home and agree to the marriage alliance." When my mother realized what I had said, she was so happy she couldn't stop smiling. She quickly said she would pass the good news on to Sarah. Sarah was my arranged marriage partner, a proper young woman from a prestigious family. I added, "But it'll have to wait for 2 weeks." I had grown up in North City and had many friends there. Suddenly returning to South City for a marriage arrangement felt difficult. There were too many memories to leave behind. On top of that, I had an upcoming competition, so I couldn't leave immediately. My mother replied, "That makes sense. You and Veronica were childhood sweethearts, and it would have been natural for you to marry. But given our family situation, things turned out differently. You'll need time to handle everything." She understood me well. After saying that, she hung up. I put my phone away, slipped my hands into my pockets, and gazed at the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, letting out a long sigh. Because of my family's circumstances, I had been raised by Veronica's family since I was young. Aunt Lou treated me like her own son. I had always taken care of Veronica, who was a few months younger than me. Veronica was cute and clingy. Ever since school, we always chose seats together. She was constantly by my side. Whether going to school or leaving, we always walked together. Aside from going to the bathroom or sleeping, we were almost inseparable. Every love letter I received in school was intercepted and torn up by Veronica. She would even announce to everyone, "Daniel is mine. Stay away from him." And I never denied it. Everyone assumed that after graduation, we would naturally get married. Even Aunt Lou often teased Veronica, saying, "My little treasure, raised so carefully, is about to run off with someone." Hearing this, I would lower my head, too embarrassed to look at Veronica. I didn't know how she truly felt, and I was afraid that revealing my suppressed feelings might scare her away. Veronica, standing beside me, would playfully bump Aunt Lou with her shoulder and say, "Mom, if you keep talking, Daniel's face is going to turn red like a lobster." Aunt Lou would laugh and reply, all right, I won't say any more." As graduation approached, the campus beauty confessed to me. She stopped me at the school gate and read me a love letter with deep emotion. Veronica happened to see the scene. She angrily turned around and left. I immediately apologized to the girl and rushed after Veronica. This time, she was especially hard to calm down. In the past, when she got upset, I would take her out for tiramisu and she would calm down. But this time, Veronica cried heartbrokenly, throwing herself into my arms and pounding her fists against my chest. I silently endured it, letting her vent. In that moment, even I, normally slow to notice such things, could clearly feel her feelings for me. While feeling secretly relieved, I had already begun planning my confession after graduation. But before I could confess, Veronica suddenly turned and threw herself into someone else's arms. They had met through a club activity. On the very day I was planning to confess, I saw Veronica nestled in Alexander's embrace. She turned her head, smiled faintly at me, and said, "Daniel, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Alexander. Wish me luck." I hurriedly stuffed the ring box I was holding back into my pocket. Veronica noticed and curiously asked, "What's that small box you're holding?" Alexander followed her gaze and looked at my hand behind my back, teasing, Could it be a birthday gift for me? Are you planning to surprise me? I lowered my eyes, hiding the sadness there, and shook my head. No, it's just my stuff. It was the gift I had prepared for my confession, symbolizing my wish to offer Veronica eternal love. But now, it was clear she didn't need that love. There was no need for a confession anymore. I silently buried my feelings and put the engagement ring away. At that moment, a magnetic voice sounded behind me, pulling me back to reality. Daniel, I'm cutting the cake. Come help me sing happy birthday. Alexander, wearing a birthday hat, stood behind me with a smile. I only glanced at him briefly before shifting my gaze entirely to Veronica. She was wearing a white dress, looking like a princess from a fairy tale. The sunlight made her face glow even more brightly. She smiled at me, and the small dimples on her cheeks were like aged wine, captivating, yet completely unaware of their effect. She said, Daniel, come over and sing happy birthday to Alexander. I had never been able to refuse Veronica. With heavy steps, I walked over, stood opposite her, and joined in clapping and singing. After Alexander made his wish with his eyes closed, he opened them and blew out the candles. After cutting the cake, Veronica's phone rang. She stepped onto the balcony to answer the call. Suddenly, Alexander screamed. He violently smashed the cake onto the ground and pointed at me, shouting, Daniel, what are you doing? Why did you throw my cake? I know I'm poor and you look down on me, but Veronica and I truly love each other. Even if you despise me, you can't ruin my first birthday. His voice was loud. Veronica, who had been on the balcony, immediately hung up the call and rushed inside. I looked at her and tried to explain. It wasn't me. Veronica frowned deeply and stared at me with cold indifference. She shouted, Daniel, you've gone too far. Do you know he comes from a poor family? This is Alexander's first birthday. Apologize to him. Hearing that, my heart sank. I asked hoarsely, You don't trust me? After 20 years of friendship, I couldn't believe it lost to just 3 months with someone else. Seeing Veronica defend Alexander so fiercely shattered my heart. Alexander spoke up gently. Veronica, don't blame Daniel. I'm sure he didn't mean it. He tugged at her arm. Forget the cake. Maybe people like me from poor families don't even deserve to celebrate a birthday. Hearing this, Veronica's expression darkened further. She walked toward me, her face cold, her tone flat. Apologize to Alexander. Don't make me say it again. I stared at her, unable to believe the woman in front of me was the same person who once clung to me. My eyes burned as I exhaled deeply, forcing my voice to stay steady. I already said I didn't do it. With that, I turned and left. When I reached the villa gate, I could no longer hold it in, and tears welled up. More than 10 years of unspoken love had ended just like that. The look of distrust she gave me pierced my heart like a knife. But soon, I accepted it. Since she had already found someone she loved, it was time for me to return home and shoulder my responsibilities. The law family business in South City had long been in crisis. My mother had repeatedly urged me to form a marriage alliance with the Lee family. They had even discussed an engagement a year earlier. But because I loved Veronica, I kept delaying it, believing I could find another way. Now, arranging the marriage seemed like the only solution. Feeling troubled, I went to the bar to meet my brother Kevin. We drank glass after glass. He didn't pry, just stayed by my side, matching my pace. That's what friendship between men is, understanding without words. My phone rang. I picked it up, thinking it might be Veronica asking me to come home. But it was a message from Alexander. About the cake incident today, it was just a warning. I don't care what feelings you have for Veronica. She's my girlfriend now. Stay away from her. Even if you try, you can't beat me. I'm her true love. She only believes me. I tossed my phone aside. I couldn't understand how Veronica could be with someone like him. Poor, scheming. Yet when she looked at him, her eyes were filled with raw, unguarded affection. It made jealousy burn in my chest. I drank for 3 hours. Veronica never called. Before, she couldn't go 10 minutes without contacting me. Now she had forgotten me completely. It wasn't until Aunt Lou grew worried that she came to find me. Seeing me drunk and slumped over, she sighed. You two clearly like each other. How did Veronica suddenly get a boyfriend? She shook her head and quietly left. As soon as the door closed, I jumped up, muttering, Veronica clearly likes me. Why did she suddenly fall in love with someone else? I staggered to her room and knocked hard. No answer. I opened the door. It was empty. The bed was neatly made. It was past 1 in the morning. She wasn't home. My hands trembled as I called her. When the call connected, I urgently asked, Veronica, where are you? It's so late. A deep voice answered, annoyed. Veronica is my girlfriend. She doesn't need to report her whereabouts to you. Then I heard her soft voice. Who are you talking to? I knew exactly what was happening. My hands fell limp. Alexander's faint smirk told me everything. Veronica now belonged to him. I don't remember how I got back to my room. I only remember how cold the summer breeze felt. The last trace of hope was extinguished. This time, I made my decision. Going home and arranging the marriage was my only choice. The next morning, I received a call from the school. The counselor asked me to return to campus to give a speech as an outstanding student representative. After thinking about it briefly, I agreed. The counselor had always treated me well and had even helped me gather materials for competitions, so this was a small favor I couldn't refuse. By the time I finished the speech, the sun had already set. I stood outside the school, preparing to take a taxi home, when Alexander suddenly appeared in front of me out of nowhere. When he saw the rolled-up award certificate in my hand, his eyes widened in surprise. Daniel, you're amazing, he exclaimed. You're the outstanding student representative? The last time I asked the counselor for this, he didn't give it to me. So he gave it to you instead. He smiled as he continued, I've dreamed of getting this award. Can I take a look at your certificate? On the surface, he sounded as if he was asking for permission, but before I could respond, his hand had already reached out and grabbed the certificate. That gesture disgusted me. It felt exactly like the way he had taken away the person I loved without a word. Frowning, I refused without thinking. No. If you want to see it, go earn your own. But Alexander didn't let go. He gripped the certificate tightly, and during the struggle, the thin paper tore cleanly in half. Looking at the ripped certificate, Alexander let out a low chuckle. He leaned closer to me and whispered into my ear, Know your place. You can't compete with me. Just like with this certificate, the same goes for people. Hearing those words, a surge of anger rushed through my chest. I clenched my fists and raised my hand, ready to teach this two-faced person a lesson. But before my fist could land, Alexander suddenly took a step back and fell to the ground. My heart skipped a beat. I immediately knew things were about to go wrong. Sure enough, the next moment Veronica's voice rang out. Daniel, are you bullying my boyfriend again? She had just gotten out of a taxi and hurried over to Alexander's side. She helped him up anxiously and shot me a look filled with icy disdain. Don't think that just because you're my brother you can treat the people I care about however you want, she said coldly. Alexander held Veronica's hand and shook his head gently, his voice soft and affectionate. Veronica, don't blame Daniel. It's my fault. I really wanted to see his award certificate. He continued, I pulled too hard, and that's why it tore. Daniel is angry, and he has every right to shout at me. After all, he even pushed me. Hearing this, Veronica gently stroked Alexander's head, her voice warm as she replied, It's just a certificate. If it's torn, it's torn. It doesn't compare to how important you are. Then, without hesitation, she turned to me. Her eyes were cold, her tone distant. Alexander is my boyfriend. Please respect him and stop targeting him for no reason. It's just a certificate. What's the big deal if it's torn? There was no need to push my boyfriend. The indifference and anger in her eyes made all the words I wanted to say get stuck in my throat. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't speak. After thinking for a moment, I gave up. There was no point in explaining anymore. They looked so deeply in love now, and explaining would only make things worse for me. I pulled my gaze away from them, waved down an approaching taxi, and got inside. As soon as I sat down, my phone rang. It was Kevin. Bro, I heard Veronica has a boyfriend now, he said. And it's not you. I nodded. I wasn't planning to hide it from him. It was just that when we were drinking the night before, he hadn't asked, so I didn't bring it up. After all, I had no right to talk about it. We were just childhood friends, and there was no rule that childhood friends had to end up together. Veronica had the right to love whoever she wanted. If that person wasn't me, then that was simply how life was. Kevin sighed. Ah, what a pity. You two were the golden couple since childhood. Top students, teacher favorites, always together. When you were around, the air itself felt sweet. And yet, he paused, then continued carefully, and yet, you never ended up together. Why is that? I fell silent for a moment before answering. I don't know. How could love be explained? Love never follows logic. When you love someone, you just do, there's no reason. It's simply a choice from the heart. Veronica didn't choose me, and that wasn't her fault. I couldn't possibly hold a knife to her neck and demand that she love me just because everyone thought we should be together. That wasn't realistic. After some casual conversation, Kevin and I ended the call. By then, the car had already arrived home. I paid the driver and stepped out. Since I was leaving soon, I figured it was time to pack my things. But when I reached my room, I found the door wide open. I rushed inside and immediately saw Alexander holding a jade pendant in his hand, my father's heirloom. He clearly knew how important it was to me. The next moment, he pretended to slip, and the pendant fell from his hand. I rushed forward, trying desperately to catch it, but it slipped through my fingers and hit the ground with a sharp crack, shattering into 2 pieces. My anger finally exploded. Who gave you permission to touch my things? I shouted. I didn't care how affectionate he and Veronica were, but if he dared to provoke me, I wasn't going to let it slide. To my surprise, Alexander didn't show a trace of guilt. Instead, he laughed. Crossing his arms, he looked at me casually and said slowly, "This is punishment for your shamelessness." He sneered at me with disdain. "You're just an adopted son of the Liu family. If you know what's good for you, get out." At that moment, Veronica came out of the study after hearing the noise. As soon as Alexander saw her, his expression instantly turned pitiful. His eyes reddened as he looked at her. "Veronica, could you ask Daniel to go easy on me?" he said softly. "I only wanted to grab your purse." Veronica loved buying handbags, and she had so many that her room couldn't hold them all. Afraid of being scolded by Liu mother, she had stored half of them in my wardrobe. Alexander paused, then added, "I saw how beautiful that jade pendant was and couldn't help picking it up. I slipped and broke it." Daniel looked so angry. Veronica smiled gently and comforted him. "It's fine. It's just a pendant. He won't do anything to you." After reassuring him, she turned to glare at me. "Daniel, it's just a jade pendant. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? My boyfriend is already timid enough, and you scared him." Alexander hid behind Veronica like a frightened quail, playing along perfectly. I glared at him, my hatred unmistakable. Then I looked down at the broken jade pendant on the floor and back at Veronica. Grinding my teeth, I said, "Your boyfriend just destroyed the only heirloom my father left me. Shouldn't I be angry?" I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How had Veronica changed so much? She didn't even ask what happened. She simply assumed I was at fault. She used to always stand by me. Back in school, when the campus beauty liked me, several classmates who had pursued her for years turned against me. They conspired together, accusing me of being a voyeur and fabricating evidence that was almost impossible to disprove. The entire school believed them. People avoided me like the plague. No one would even sit within 2 meters of me. But Veronica trusted me. She always sat beside me and even helped me confront those who insulted me. She once said, "I trust you, Daniel. We grew up together, and I know what kind of person you are. I will always believe in you." Unfortunately, there was no such thing as forever. Veronica's trust in me had disappeared. When she heard my words now, Veronica froze for a moment. She looked down at the shattered jade pendant, blinking a few times. "When I was young, my family went through a massive crisis. My father suddenly died of a heart attack, and the doctors couldn't save him. He left behind enormous debt. To protect me from debt collectors and let me grow up peacefully, my mother sent me to live with Lou Mother's family. That jade pendant was the only thing my father left me after his death, and Veronica knew how much it meant to me. But she only paused briefly before continuing to scold me. It's just a worthless object. How can an object be more important than a person? Alexander peeked out from behind her and said cautiously, Daniel, I'm sorry. I didn't know the pendant meant so much to you. If I had known, I wouldn't have touched it. He raised his hand and swore an oath. Veronica immediately grabbed his hand and said tenderly, It's fine. It's just a small matter. There's no need to swear. Then she looked at me coldly. He's already apologized. Stop being so petty. After that, she pulled Alexander away. I could faintly hear them talking as they left. You can look at things, but how could you break it? Veronica said. I'm sorry, I just slipped. I won't do it again, Alexander replied. Tonight, let's go to a hotel, okay? Sure, the usual place, Veronica answered. Their voices gradually faded. The mansion fell silent. Alone, I bent down and picked up the jade pendant with reddened eyes. I tried to piece it back together, but the flawless jade now bore a dark crack, and no matter what I did, it couldn't be repaired. My phone rang. It was a message from Alexander. Don't think I don't know how you feel about Veronica, but unfortunately, she only loves me. If you're smart, you'll leave and stop ruining our happiness. I smiled bitterly and replied, Do you think Veronica would be happy if I showed her the messages you sent me? Alexander immediately panicked. What do you want? He asked. Then, as if realizing something, he sent another message, laughing. I destroyed your father's heirloom, and Veronica didn't say a word. So what do you think she'll do if you show her? Nothing. She'll just think you're jealous, petty, and disgusting. I stared at the screen, a cold wave washing over me. He was right. People choose who they want to favor. I no longer held any place in Veronica's heart, so even if I was right, she wouldn't stand by me. I silenced my phone, put it away, and began packing. I had lived here for 20 years, but I didn't have many belongings. In less than half an hour, I was done. When I went out to ship the package, I ran into Veronica and Alexander at a nearby pet store, where they were playing with cats. When Veronica saw the suitcase in my hand, her expression darkened briefly. Are you leaving? She asked cautiously. I continued paying for the package and replied calmly, My mom likes the silk here, so I'm getting some for her. Things had already gone too far. There was no need to mention leaving. I was a stranger now, and leaving quietly was probably best. Veronica nodded, seemingly relieved. Your mom always says she loves the silk here. When I have time, I'll go back with you to visit her. She didn't notice anything unusual. Wrapping her arm around Alexander, she smiled warmly. Alexander glanced at me, his gaze dark and displeased. He was probably thinking that if I couldn't leave yet, it was time to push harder. I didn't look at them again. It's fine, I said, then turned and walked away. Veronica watched me walk away, and for a brief moment, a sharp pain flashed through her heart. Alexander pulled her into his arms and spoke gently, Veronica, it's getting late. Let's go watch a movie. The pain in her heart quickly faded. She smiled, nodded happily, and left with Alexander. I returned to the mansion alone. Standing in the living room, I stared blankly for a long time. This place, where I had lived for 20 years, was filled with warm and beautiful memories. It was a pity that it was time to leave. After dinner, I invited my close friends out. I wanted to properly say goodbye to them. We chose the lounge bar we always went to. One of them sighed and said, Daniel, we all thought the first wedding we'd be drinking to after graduation would be yours and Veronica's. Who would have thought this would turn into a farewell party instead? After learning that I was leaving, none of them wanted to let me go. Their expressions were heavy, and after sighing deeply, they raised their glasses and drank them dry. Kevin finally asked the question everyone was thinking. Do you really have to go back and accept that arranged marriage? To marry a woman you don't love? They all looked at me, waiting for an answer. My fingers lightly traced the rim of my glass. Facing their hopeful gazes, I stayed silent, lifted my glass, and drank the strong liquor in one go. A few drops slid down the corner of my mouth. That alone was answer enough. Seeing this, no one pressed further. They simply stayed with me quietly, cherishing these final moments together. Suddenly, the door to the private room was kicked open with a loud crash. Veronica stormed in, grabbed my collar, and shouted, "Daniel, I never thought you were this kind of person." Her gaze swept across the room. Seeing that there were only men inside, she frowned in confusion and demanded, "Where did you hide that woman?" I was completely confused. "What woman?" I asked. That only fueled her anger further. She glared at me and shouted, "Are you still pretending? Since Auntie entrusted you to stay at my house, I can't allow you to hire prostitutes." My face immediately turned cold. I shoved her hand away and said through clenched teeth, "That's nonsense." The guys around us hurried to defend me. "You must have misunderstood. We're all here tonight to—" I cut them off. "Who told you I hired prostitutes?" I stared directly at Veronica. At that moment, I realized I no longer recognized her. The Veronica who once trusted me unconditionally was gone. She stammered, "It was that classmate," but couldn't finish her sentence. Of course, she wouldn't admit that Alexander had told her one of his friends saw me at Ching Fong Bar holding a woman. Combined with the bar's reputation, she panicked. She hadn't even watched half the movie before rushing out to confront me. She raised her voice again. "Don't ask who told me. You're not allowed to mess around. If you dare to, I'll tell Auntie and make her teach you a lesson." I sneered, sat down on the sofa with my glass, crossed my legs, and raised it toward the others. "Come on, let's keep drinking." Veronica, used to being the center of attention, became frantic when I ignored her. She rushed over, grabbed my glass, and smashed it on the ground with a loud crash. "Daniel, are you even listening to me?" she shouted. "Ever since I brought Alexander home, you've been acting strange. Now you're giving me attitude." The others wanted to speak up for me. They all knew how much I had done for Veronica. She loved buying bags, and I used my scholarship money to buy them for her birthdays. She was afraid to walk alone at night, so throughout high school I walked her home after evening classes. Even in college, if I didn't have class, I waited outside her classroom to walk her home. She loved crab roe soup dumplings from an off-campus shop, and even after graduation, I bought them for her every morning. Now, for her to accuse me of being untrustworthy, it was heartbreaking even to an outsider. But I waved my hand, signaling them to stop. They backed off, understanding. I glanced at her and said coldly, "You're overthinking it." Glass shards lay scattered on the floor, reflecting Veronica's furious expression. She snorted and glanced at the others. "Fine. It better be." With that, she left, showing no remorse for ruining my gathering. After she was gone, Kevin patted my shoulder silently. I smiled bitterly, picked up a glass, and raised it high. To our final moments together. After tonight, it would be difficult to meet again. We quietly pushed Veronica's outburst aside and continued drinking. The clinking of glasses echoed through the room, reflecting the free-spirited youth we once had. The next morning, I was in my study preparing for the physics competition the following week. Without knocking, Alexander walked in, scanning the room with disdain. Seeing him act so comfortable, as if he owned the place, my anger surged. "This is my room. Please leave," I said through clenched teeth. Alexander laughed mockingly. "Your room? Aren't you just a pitiful guy living in Veronica's house? Every room in this villa belongs to Veronica. How did it become yours?" He crossed his arms and smirked. "Get this straight. I'm Veronica's boyfriend now. You're just an outsider. If you're smart, you'll pack up and leave." I set my pen down and looked at him coldly. "You should mind your own business. Otherwise, when your little facade falls apart and Veronica dumps you, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." Alexander frowned sharply. "What do you mean? Are you planning to tell Veronica? How old are you, still playing childish games? Don't make me lose respect for you." He was clearly flustered, genuinely afraid I might expose him. But I didn't have time for that. I was leaving anyway and was only staying for the competition. Rather than waste time arguing with an idiot, I preferred to focus on my studies. I packed up and went to find a quiet study room. Watching me leave, Alexander couldn't suppress his smug grin. Staring at my back, he muttered, "As long as I get rid of you, Veronica will be my wife, and I'll marry into a rich family." Ever since Lu Mu found out her daughter was dating a man from a lower background, she had been at odds with Veronica and hadn't come home in a long time. The villa was left to Alexander alone. He spread his arms wide, breathing deeply, as if the air of the upper class now belonged to him. The day of the physics competition arrived. Veronica and Alexander sat in the audience, cheering for me. I was naturally gifted in physics, praised by professors as a rare genius. As expected, I took first place. When the host announced the result, Veronica and Alexander hugged excitedly, as if they had won. After the ceremony, Alexander approached me again, praising the trophy and pretending he wanted to touch it. I had already seen through him. I stuffed the trophy into my pocket and said coldly, "I have something to do. I'm leaving." "Wait," Veronica called. I paused. She said slowly, "Alexander and I are getting engaged. You know he's always admired your trophies. When the time comes, bring them so he can show them off." Her tone wasn't a request, it was a statement. I sneered. Sure. I had no intention of taking the trophies with me. Wherever I went, awards followed. I didn't need trophies to prove myself. Seeing I didn't object, Alexander smiled brightly. "Great, thank you, Daniel. You're helping me live my dream. When we get engaged, would you be willing to be my best man?" He knew exactly where to strike. There was nothing more painful than being asked to attend your lover's engagement. Veronica, still holding his arm, added, "Alexander doesn't have many friends. Could you be his best man?" They never once considered my feelings. The engagement party was in a week. My meeting with Sarah was also in a week. "I can't," I said. "I have something to do that day." But Alexander persisted. "Daniel, even if you don't like me, at least come up with a better excuse." His eyes looked pitiful, like a wounded deer. Veronica's gaze turned icy. "You have to be our best man." Time passed quickly, and the day of the engagement party arrived. I stared at the best man's suit in my hands, unable to put it on. The festive red mocked my misery. Seeing me hesitate, Alexander lowered his head, looking hurt. "Daniel, don't you want to be our best man?" I threw the suit aside and replied coldly, "Yes." As soon as I said it, Alexander suddenly fell backward onto the floor. Lying there, he cried out, "Daniel, even if you have a problem with me, you shouldn't hit me at my engagement party." Guests immediately gathered, shouting insults. "Heartless! Causing trouble at an engagement party! People like you don't deserve a good life." Veronica rushed over in her pristine white dress, helped Alexander up, and glared at me with hatred. "You've gone too far," she said. She supported Alexander as they walked away together. Watching them, I expected pain, but felt nothing. At that moment, I realized I had truly let go. The passionate feelings of my youth had already vanished. After leaving, I sent Veronica a message wishing her happiness, then blocked her number. I hailed a taxi straight to the airport. After 20 years, I was finally leaving. It was midday. After a 4-hour flight to Southern City, I would arrive just in time for dinner with Sarah. I needed to take this marriage seriously. After landing, I turned on my phone and received my mother's call. I laughed as I answered. "I'm at the airport entrance," she said, "but I don't see you." I looked around. The airport wasn't crowded. I spotted a well-dressed woman draped in silk and waved. My mother excitedly waved back and pulled a tall, long-haired woman toward me. Without introductions, I knew she was Sarah. I couldn't help staring. Her face felt familiar, though I couldn't remember where I'd seen her. My mother laughed and tapped my head. "You can't stare at a girl like that. If you scare her off, I'll blame you." I scratched my head awkwardly. Sarah shyly lowered hers, her cheeks flushed pink. "Sorry," I said. "I feel like I've seen you somewhere before." She smiled gently. "It's okay." Seeing the awkwardness, my mother decided to break the ice and took us to play one of those popular group games. When Sarah and I stood at the entrance of the escape room, Both of us looked completely confused. I said, "Mom, isn't it too sudden for me and Miss Lee to play something like this on our first meeting?" Sarah followed up nervously, "Mom, I'm scared of things like this. Do we really have to play?" My mother nodded eagerly. Using both her hands and feet, she pushed us straight inside. While doing so, she said enthusiastically, "Of course you have to play. How else will you develop feelings for each other?" Meanwhile, back at the engagement party, it was time for Veronica and Alexander to exchange rings. Just as Alexander was about to slip the ring onto Veronica's finger, she instinctively looked down toward the guests, but she couldn't find that familiar face anywhere. She frowned, completely forgetting that it was her engagement party, and suddenly shouted, "Where is Daniel? Where is he?" The guests exchanged glances. No one spoke. They simply shook their heads. Veronica grew anxious and turned toward Alexander, questioning him sharply. "Did you do something?" At that moment, the way Veronica looked at Alexander was cold, filled with anger and completely devoid of affection. Seeing her expression, Alexander instinctively swallowed, trying to remain calm as he said, "I didn't do anything. What could I possibly do? I've just been cooperating with you." Hearing this, Veronica paused. She stared at him so intensely it was as if she wanted to burn a hole through his face. Then she screamed hysterically, "Who else could it be? You'd better pray that Daniel shows up right now, or we're done." Alexander's face turned pale with fear, but he still forced out, "It wasn't me." Veronica ignored him. Lifting her wedding dress, she ran off the stage. She frantically called me, but soon realized her number had been blocked. Unable to reach me, she was on the verge of losing her mind. In desperation, she grabbed a nearby guest's phone and dialed the number she knew by heart. But the call still wouldn't go through. The phone rang endlessly, yet no one answered. Outside the escape room, the staff noticed the phone ringing non-stop and quietly walked over to mute it. The guest whose phone had been taken was annoyed. Unable to tolerate her behavior any longer, he snatched it back and walked away. Veronica shouted in frustration, "What are you doing? Don't you have any compassion? The person I love most is missing, and you won't even lend me your phone." The guest frowned and muttered, "Crazy." Then he added, "You're already engaged to another man, yet you're still claiming to love Daniel. What a lie." After saying that, he shoved the phone back into his pocket and left. Veronica's eyes instantly filled with tears, which streamed down uncontrollably. She screamed in agony, "You don't understand anything. There will never be anyone in this world who loves Daniel more than I do." Seeing her cry, Alexander reached out and tried to hold her. He said, "Veronica, a man like him doesn't deserve your love. Look at me, won't you? I love you too. Today is our engagement party. Can we continue?" This was the result of all his efforts. He had worked so hard to push me away, so hard to get engaged to Veronica. How could he give it up now? Veronica looked at Alexander, then slapped him hard across the face. Full of regret, she said, "Ugh, I shouldn't have listened to you. I shouldn't have gone along with this act. Now Daniel is gone. Completely gone. Are you satisfied?" After speaking, she lifted her wedding dress and ran out, leaving Alexander standing there holding the ring. The entire engagement party instantly became a joke. The guests sighed and left awkwardly. Alexander stood alone in the center of the hall, watching Veronica's retreating figure, grinding his teeth in anger. He clenched his fists and muttered, "What am I lacking compared to Daniel? Why can't you love me? We were so close, just one step away from getting engaged." After leaving, Veronica used all her connections to search for my whereabouts. But it was as if I had vanished into thin air. There wasn't a single clue. I had already told my friends not to reveal my location, so when Veronica asked them, they all shook their heads and said they didn't know. Veronica stood helplessly in my room, staring at everything she was familiar with, her eyes turning red. She rummaged through my wardrobe, hoping to find some trace of me, and accidentally discovered a small box. Inside were photographs of her, photos I had taken myself. Beneath them was a small note. "On the bridge, you were looking at the scenery while I was looking at you. Love has no origin, but once it starts, it runs deep." She gasped, covering her mouth in shock. "So, Daniel has always liked me." Realizing this, Veronica searched even harder. An entire day passed, and she practically turned the whole city upside down. Still, there was no news of me. She even had people check all transportation records, but my name didn't appear anywhere. Unable to hold back any longer, Alexander said, "This city isn't that big. If you can't find him inside or outside the city, he might already be dead." The moment she heard this, Veronica raised her hand and slapped him hard across the face. She shouted, "What are you? Get out. Don't ever show yourself to me again, or I'll slap you every time I see you." Veronica's family had power and influence, and these words were not empty threats. Alexander's face turned pale, and he fell silent. Still, he refused to leave her side. He grabbed her hand and begged, "Veronica, I'm sorry. Everything I said earlier was out of anger. I just love you so much. Please don't send me away, okay? If you do, I'll have no way to live." Alexander's father was an alcoholic and a gambler, buried in debt. To pay it off, Alexander started gambling himself. He believed that with his intelligence, he could win big, clear the debts, and give his mother a better life. Instead, he fell into an endless abyss. His debts grew larger and larger, impossible to repay. To avoid being beaten and threatened by debt collectors, he borrowed from every platform he could find, the interest snowballing beyond control. A few months earlier, Alexander had seen Veronica crying by the roadside. It was common knowledge that Veronica and I liked each other, though neither of us realized it. Remembering how the school beauty had once confessed to me, Alexander immediately understood why Veronica was crying. He quietly approached her, crouched beside her, and said softly, "Do you want to know if Daniel likes you?" At that moment, Veronica was like a drowning person grasping at a lifeline. She nodded eagerly, tears still in her eyes. Alexander gently wiped the tears from her face and said in a gentlemanly tone, "It's simple. Be with me and see if he gets jealous. If he really loves you, he won't be able to resist confessing." Veronica thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. After getting together with Alexander, Veronica was generous to ensure his full cooperation. She gave him an allowance of at least 100,000 a month. With that money, Alexander's financial pressure eased greatly. If he lost Veronica, the golden goose, he would be finished. Seeing that Veronica was still unmoved, Alexander suddenly knelt in front of her. Tears filled his eyes, his face reddening as he looked at her and said, "I'll help you find Daniel. Please don't drive me away, okay?" This plea softened Veronica's heart. Her eyes lit up as she asked, "Can you really find him?" Alexander nodded. "Give me 1,000,000, and I'll tell you." As the saying goes, a man always has his tricks. While Veronica, a rich young lady, relied on connections and transportation records, Alexander, an ordinary person, thought differently. He remembered the incident at the courier center and realized it hadn't been a coincidence. Claiming that I was his friend and that there was an issue with the parcel, he obtained the surveillance footage from the shop before it was shipped. When he reviewed the footage, he discovered that the suitcase didn't contain silk fabric at all. It held my clothes and daily necessities. After telling Veronica what he found, he added his guess. He must have sent his luggage ahead. "He's gone back to the southern city." Hearing this, Veronica suddenly remembered something. A smile broke across her face as she turned and rushed out, hailing a cab to the airport. This time, it was her mistake. She had to find me, explain everything, and confess her feelings. Inside the escape room, the pitch-dark environment made Sarah uneasy. She clutched my shirt nervously. I could feel her rapid breathing behind me, so I deliberately slowed my pace, keeping a distance that was neither too close nor too far. I asked, raising my voice to distract her, "Is this your first time here?" Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned the surroundings, afraid that a ghostly face might suddenly appear. After a moment, she answered hesitantly, "Why yeah, it's my first time." I shielded her with my arm and sighed, complaining, "My mom really doesn't think things through, making us do this without considering whether we're scared." Hearing that, Sarah peeked out from behind me and asked softly, "Are you scared too?" I chuckled, lowered my voice, and whispered in her ear, "Yeah, but I have a trick. Just imagine their faces as cabbages, and suddenly they're not scary at all." Sarah giggled, and most of her fear faded. As we laughed and worked through the puzzles together, our bond grew little by little. I thought Sarah was wonderful, well-mannered, proper, as if she had been carefully sculpted from a mold. That kind of goodness made me feel protective. Unlike Veronica, who had been spoiled since childhood, Sarah's every action felt measured. She was gentle but always carried a sense of distance. Watching her laugh freely or scream when the NPCs appeared, I finally felt she was real, a living, breathing person. In that moment, I understood my mother's good intentions. Escape rooms really were a great way to bring people closer. In just 1 hour, the distance between Sarah and me had clearly lessened. Before leaving, I asked her, "Why did you agree to the arranged marriage?" To me, it seemed unbelievable. The law group was in chaos. My mother had spent enormous money and effort to clean up my father's mess, nearly draining the family fortune. Marrying me would bring Sarah no benefit, yet she would have to invest heavily to help revive the law group. After hearing my question, Sarah paused, then smiled. Her eyes sparkled, and in that moment, she looked at me as if I were the only person in the world. She said, "Because of you." Just then, we reached the exit. A staff member stepped forward respectfully and handed me my phone. "Sir, your phone has been ringing continuously. To avoid disturbing other guests, I put it on silent for you. Please check it." I nodded, then turned to Sarah and said, "Sorry, Miss Lee, I didn't hear what you just said. Could you say it again?" Sarah smiled politely. "It's nothing. Just check your phone. You wouldn't want to miss an important call." I unlocked the phone. There were countless missed calls, 5 from Veronica and several from unknown numbers. After glancing at them, I turned the phone off. "Nothing important," I said. "Let's go." Sarah gave me a suspicious look. "Are you sure everything's fine? The staff said your phone had been ringing non-stop." I smiled slightly, slipped the phone into my pocket, and replied, "Really, it's nothing. Just some unimportant people." The person I once couldn't stop thinking about had become someone insignificant. I chuckled coldly to myself as I walked ahead. "Miss Lee, let's go. My mom's still waiting outside." Sarah nodded obediently and followed. My mom was sitting outside, sipping coffee. The moment she saw us walking out together, her eyes lit up. Seeing us laughing and chatting, she quickly invited us to dinner. "You must be hungry. I know a great barbecue place. Sarah, you have to try it." Sarah came from a scholarly family where everything had been carefully arranged. She had never eaten barbecue before. Still, not wanting to disappoint my mom, she hesitantly nodded. I watched the scene with mixed emotions, casting a complicated glance at Sarah before quickly looking away. After arriving at the barbecue restaurant, Sarah, clearly unfamiliar with such a place, looked a little uncomfortable. My mom noticed immediately, smiled, and pulled Sarah to sit beside her. In a gentle voice, she reassured her, "Sarah, while exotic delicacies are nice, there's something special about the flavors of the streets too. Today I'm treating you, so you must try something different." Sarah smiled politely and sat down quietly. She carefully observed my mom's actions. When my mom took a small bowl to scoop some sauce, Sarah did the same. When my mom added a spoonful of chili, Sarah followed. When my mom scooped green pepper sauce, Sarah did that too. By the time they returned to their seats, Sarah's bowl was filled with red oil. My mom looked at her in surprise and said, "Wow, Sarah, I didn't expect you to be able to handle spicy food. I thought people from the South City didn't eat spicy food." Sarah was a little puzzled by the comment. She blinked in confusion for a moment, then nodded and said, "I just wanted to try." I had already prepared a milder dish. Hearing their conversation, I explained, "My mom's from Sichuan. She's been eating spicy food since she was a kid." Sarah smiled in understanding. My mom, who had loved spicy food for years, eagerly began grilling pork belly on the wire rack. As it sizzled and the oil bubbled, she picked up the meat with her chopsticks, dipped it into the sauce, wrapped it in a lettuce leaf, and happily ate it. Watching this, Sarah tried to imitate her. But after just one small bite, she was overwhelmed by the spiciness. Seeing this, I quickly handed her the glass of cool water I had prepared earlier. Sarah gratefully took it and drank deeply. When my mom saw Sarah's face turn red from the spice, she burst out laughing. "Looks like Sarah isn't quite used to this." Thinking my mom disliked her, Sarah hurriedly tried to explain, stammering, I can. Before she could finish, I interrupted her. Try this instead. I placed the milder dish I hadn't touched yet in front of her. Sarah looked at the simpler dish and smiled. She took a bite, and instead of burning heat, she tasted the gentle aroma of grilled meat. Seeing her enjoy it, I took the initiative to grill more meat and placed it on her plate once it was done. My mom noticed this, narrowed her eyes, and teased me with a smile. Ah, my good son. You finally come home, and now you won't even grill some meat for me. Is this what happens when you get a wife? You forget about your mother. Sarah blushed, feeling awkward and unsure how to respond. I frowned slightly and said softly, Mom, you're a regular here. You don't need me to take care of you. Then I turned to Sarah and gently added, It's okay. My mom's just a little carefree. You don't need to mind her. Hearing this, Sarah covered her mouth and laughed. My mom shot me a playful, resentful glance, but I didn't pay it any attention. I was already used to it. After that, my mom didn't say much more and continued eating, though her eyes never left Sarah and me. Watching the growing connection between us, she couldn't help feeling pleased and unconsciously ate a few extra pieces of meat. After dinner, my mom handed Sarah over to me and asked me to take her home. She quickly ran to the car and called out, Daniel, Sarah's place isn't far. It's just 2 kilometers away. You two can walk, digest, and chat a bit. I smiled helplessly. She might as well have just said, go build some emotional connection already. But since we were planning to get married anyway, I didn't object and politely invited Sarah to walk with me. Sarah had been worried that she wouldn't get to see me after dinner, so she was happy to walk with me and spend a little more time together. She nodded eagerly. We walked across Pearl Bridge together, the cool breeze dispersing the summer heat. I couldn't help asking, I never expected a young lady from a well-off family like you to be willing to walk. Someone like Veronica would never walk anywhere. She needed a car even for a 1-kilometer trip. Veronica once said, princesses don't walk. And if they do, a knight carries them. Hearing this, Sarah laughed softly. Because I'm walking beside you, she said. So I'm willing. Her words made me stop in my tracks. Under the dim streetlights, Sarah's face looked delicate and beautiful. The breeze lifted her hair, brushing lightly against my face and stirring my heart. I turned to her, met her gaze, and asked seriously, Do we know each other? Sarah nodded, then after a moment shook her head. She bit her lip, looking a little embarrassed. You might not remember who I am. But I've always remembered you. You were the only light in my life. Sarah had attended high school in North City. She was pure and cute, and many boys liked her, including some local tough guys. One day, during her second year, she was walking home as usual. When she reached a small alley, a group of those boys who had been waiting for her surrounded her. She felt terrified, helpless, and afraid. She prayed someone would suddenly appear to save her, but she knew that on the route she had walked countless times, almost no one passed through that alley. In despair, she even thought about ending it all. At that moment, Daniel appeared. With a straw in his mouth and a box of milk in his hand, he happened to witness the scene. He shouted loudly, scaring the thugs away. Sarah crouched in the dark corner, watching Daniel under the streetlight, her heart racing uncontrollably. Daniel squinted, unable to clearly see her face, and asked tentatively, Are you okay? Do you need me to walk you home? I'm free right now. Still shaken, Sarah hugged herself tightly and replied, I'm fine. I called my family. They'll come pick me up. Thank you. Daniel nodded and turned to leave. When Sarah's uncle arrived, she trembled as she stood up and rushed into his arms. As she cried in his embrace, her eyes briefly caught a shadow against the wall. The shadow was holding a rectangular box. After confirming Sarah was safe, it turned and walked away. Sarah peeked out from her uncle's arms and looked toward where the shadow had gone. She recognized Daniel's figure. He had stayed behind, worried the thugs might return, silently watching over her. Sarah was deeply grateful. The next day, she asked around about him and soon learned that he and Veronica were childhood sweethearts, a match made in heaven. Coincidentally, her parents wanted her to transfer back to South City, and after that, they lost all contact. Sarah thought she would never see Daniel again, but fate seemed to answer her wishes. When the Law family came to propose marriage, she was overjoyed. Even though she knew the Law family was in financial trouble, she was still happy, because it meant she could see her hero again. Even if her parents objected, she decided she would marry him. When Sarah mentioned the alley incident, I suddenly slapped my forehead as realization hit me. So that girl was you. It seems we really are quite fated. Now I finally understood why Sarah looked so familiar. I realized that this arranged marriage might not be such a bad thing after all. Sarah blushed and nodded. She bit her lip, hesitated for a long time, then finally asked, "So, what about you and Veronica? I heard you're childhood sweethearts, and everyone at school says you're a perfect match." Hearing this, I let out a deep sigh. The past surged into my mind like a tidal wave. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again and said calmly, "In this world, being childhood sweethearts doesn't mean you have to be together. You said it yourself, those are just rumors from bored people. To us, we're just ordinary brother and sister. We never really started anything, and even our separation wasn't graceful." Hearing this, Sarah's tense heart relaxed. She took a deep breath and gathered her courage. "Daniel, is there any possibility that you might like me?" Under the dim streetlight, she looked up at me nervously, clutching the hem of her dress as she cautiously asked. I looked down at her. Her long eyelashes trembled, shadows dancing across her face. Instead of answering, I asked, "What about you? Do you like me?" Sarah looked at me earnestly and said firmly, "Yes. I've liked you for a long time." It was as if she had finally released a secret she had kept locked away. The tension she carried instantly eased. Now it was my turn to feel nervous. I had never considered that Sarah might like me. In my own eyes, there was nothing about me worthy of a lady like her from South City. Hearing her confession, my pupils dilated in surprise, and I didn't know how to respond. Noticing my awkwardness, Sarah didn't push for an answer. She simply smiled, lifted her foot, and started walking ahead. "Come on, take me home. I'm getting a little tired and want to sleep. Mrs. Lee said you'll take me out all day tomorrow." She sounded cheerful, like a little sunbeam, and it made me relax too. I smiled and followed her, chatting about all sorts of things as we walked. After sending Sarah home, I returned to my place. My mom had already gone to bed early for her beauty sleep. When I got home, only my neatly made bed and blanket awaited me. The luggage I had sent earlier sat quietly beside the bed. My mom always respected my privacy and never touched my things. Feeling content, I washed up and quickly fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, I was woken not by my alarm, but by warm sunlight streaming through the window. I had just gotten up when my phone rang. I unplugged the charger and picked it up. Seeing Kevin's name, I answered immediately. He told me that Veronica had been asking around about me. They had followed my instructions and revealed nothing, but Veronica seemed dazed, as if she had lost her mind. They even felt sorry for her. I chuckled lightly and told them not to interfere anymore. Veronica and I were already a thing of the past. After breakfast, my mom urged me to spend time with Sarah. I took her to do many things she had always wanted to try but never had the chance to. She was very happy. In the evening, I sent her home again. As we passed the bridge, I saw a familiar figure. "Daniel." Hearing that playful voice, my back stiffened. I turned around, and as expected, Veronica stood behind me. She frowned and rushed over, pointing at Sarah. "Who is she?" Sarah had met Veronica before and immediately recognized her. She stayed silent, watching me, curious how I would introduce her. With tears at the corners of her eyes, Veronica looked at me bitterly. "We've only been apart for 2 days, and you've already hooked up with a new girl?" I was surprised by her sudden appearance. I didn't know how she had found me. Even if she knew I had returned to South City, how did she locate this exact spot? But I didn't care. I looked at her coldly. "Please mind your language. We were never in a relationship, so how could we have broken up? We're just ordinary siblings, nothing more." Veronica screamed, covering her ears. "No way. I don't want to be your sister." She rushed forward and shoved Sarah, sneering, "Where did this fox come from? Let me warn you, if you keep clinging to my Daniel, I'll make you regret it." I quickly steadied Sarah. Once she stood firmly, I turned to Veronica, grinding my teeth. Veronica, show some respect. This is my fiancée, your future sister-in-law. Know your place. If you dare hurt Sarah, I won't let you get away with it. This was the first time Veronica had ever seen me this angry. She shook her head in disbelief and cried, "Sister-in-law? You're telling me this is your fiancée, a woman you've known for just 1 or 2 days. I won't accept it." She pointed at Sarah with disdain. "I've known Daniel for 20 years, from childhood until now. Can you even compare to that? If you back off now, you can still save some face. Don't wait until he dumps you and you regret it." I stepped in front of Sarah, frowning as I glared at Veronica. "When did you start acting like this?" It was as if my words ignited something inside her. Veronica suddenly started laughing angrily. "So now you're saying I'm acting like this?" she snapped. "When you spoiled me without limits, you never said that. Back then, you said I was innocent, carefree, and bold. But now that you've met that fox, suddenly I'm the one acting like this. Ha!" Her words fueled my anger. I narrowed my eyes and replied slowly, deliberately, "Shouldn't you be getting ready for your wedding with Alexander right now? What gives you the right to interfere in my life? And as for the woman I've chosen, I don't need your approval." With that, I turned around, grabbed Sarah's hand, and pulled her along as I walked away. Sarah stood there in a daze, my words echoing over and over in her mind. She softly asked, "Did you really mean it when you said I was the one you've chosen?" Hearing her question, I stopped. I bent down, flicked her forehead lightly with my finger, and chuckled. "You really do have a big heart. After being scolded for so long, the only thing you care about is what I just said." Sarah looked up at me with wide, sparkling eyes and said firmly, "Of course I care. You're the person I like, so of course I care about what you say. As for Veronica, she's probably just jealous. I can tell, she likes you." As a woman, Sarah understood the signs of love: jealousy, sudden irritability, rejecting all other women around the man she liked, getting angry, acting spoiled, and wanting the person she loved to protect her. And Veronica, whether through her words or her actions, had written her feelings for me all over her face. What Sarah didn't understand was what had happened to make things between us so unpleasant. Hearing this, I shook my head and smiled, denying her conclusion. "Impossible. She's already engaged to Alexander. How could she like me? She's probably just being possessive, thinking I should revolve around her. Once I step away, she gets upset." Sarah tilted her head and looked at me, noticing the lingering sadness in my eyes. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, she didn't. She thought maybe my reluctance to approve the marriage arrangement had something to do with Veronica. The evening breeze carried a chill, sending a shiver through me. I gently patted Sarah's head and said softly, "All right, don't think too much about it. The situation with Veronica is complicated, and I don't know how to explain it to you." The truth was, I didn't know how to explain it either. Unrequited love, a confession that was never spoken, more than 20 years of affection hidden behind the excuse of brotherly care, and deep trust issues that had shattered everything. Sarah stood quietly, listening. As I looked at her, my heart softened. She was such a good girl, and I didn't want to let her down. I reached out and gently held her shoulders. "Sarah, don't worry. Since I've chosen you, I'll be fully devoted to you. If you need reassurance, you can check my phone anytime. If you have questions, ask me anything. I won't keep any secrets from you." Feeling the warmth of my hands on her shoulders, Sarah smiled brightly, her face lighting up with happiness. She furrowed her brows mischievously and looked at me with a playful glint in her eyes, whispering, "I do have a question I want to ask you." I waited quietly, watching her with curiosity. Sarah leaned closer and quickly kissed my cheek. Her eyes curved into a joyful smile as she asked softly, "Do you think you'll ever fall for me?" A rush of warmth spread across my cheek. I stood there stunned, my feet rooted to the ground. As Sarah stepped back, my heart raced wildly. I clutched my chest, feeling its strong, steady rhythm. In the instant she kissed me, my heart seemed to stop for a moment. It was a strange feeling, like long-awaited rain after a drought. In that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was starting to fall for Sarah, the girl I'd only known for a day or two. Only after I saw her disappear up the stairs did I finally turn around and head back. To my surprise, Veronica was still standing there, looking just as agitated and wronged as before. Out of basic courtesy, I asked coldly, "Where's your hotel? I'll take you back. It's not safe for a woman to be out alone this late." Veronica blinked and shook her head. She smiled and stepped closer, hooking her arm around mine as she murmured an apology in a soft voice. "I'm sorry. I was just too anxious earlier, that's why I acted like that. I promise it won't happen again. Can you forgive me?" Her eyes were moist, like a frightened deer lost in the forest, but I felt no sympathy. I had already decided to take responsibility for Sarah, and I wouldn't let Veronica cross the line again. I remained expressionless and kept my distance, saying nothing. In my heart, Sarah was already the woman I had chosen. No one, not even Veronica, could slander or hurt her, even if Veronica had once been the one I cherished and pampered. Seeing my cold reaction, Veronica cried even harder. She bit her lip and looked at me pleadingly. "I didn't book a hotel. It's so late, and I have nowhere to stay. Can you take me home? We've known each other since we were kids. You can't refuse me, right?" Without hesitation, I refused. "No. I'll book a hotel for you right now." I took out my phone, but Veronica quickly snatched it from my hand, unlocked it with ease, and dialed my mother's number. Before I could stop her, the call connected. My mom's voice came through. "Daniel, why are you calling so late? Is something wrong?" Veronica put the phone on speaker and leaned in, speaking sweetly. "Auntie, I came to South City to visit you, but it's so late and I couldn't find a hotel. Can I stay at your place?" My mom smiled and nodded. Of course, of course. You grew up with us like family. Don't be shy, our home is your home." After chatting for a while, they hung up. Veronica smiled triumphantly and walked over to me. "See? Your mom already agreed. Let's go home." My expression darkened as I walked away in long strides. Veronica hurried after me, calling out, "Wait for me." At the Law family villa, my mom, wrapped in a silk shawl, was sitting at the dining table waiting. When she saw Veronica, she greeted her warmly. "It's so late, you must not have eaten yet. I asked Mary to prepare some home-cooked dishes. I don't know if they suit your taste." Veronica sat down comfortably and began chatting with my mom as if she belonged there. I felt puzzled. My mom clearly knew about Veronica's past feelings for me and that I was about to marry Sarah, so why invite her in? It was always easy to invite a guest, but hard to send one away. I had a feeling the coming days wouldn't be peaceful. Sure enough, the next morning Veronica, acting like a spoiled little sister, demanded that I buy her crab roe soup dumplings. Her sharp voice echoed through the entire villa as she stood at the door with her hands on her hips. "I don't care. You have to buy me crab roe soup dumplings. You always buy them for me. I haven't had them in days, and it feels like something's missing." I had just woken up, rubbed my tired eyes, and frowned. "If you want them, let Mary make them for you." Mary was an exceptional housekeeper my mom had hired, a master of every cuisine and pastry imaginable. Whatever you could think of, she could make. But Veronica wasn't satisfied. She insisted I go out and buy them myself. With tears in her eyes, she cried, "You've changed. You used to do everything I asked." Even with my normally calm temperament, I couldn't take her pestering anymore. I clenched my teeth, glared at her, and said in a low voice, "Don't take my kindness for granted. And you're already engaged. You should keep your distance from men." I glanced pointedly at her pajamas, which were so revealing that they made the situation even more uncomfortable. Veronica didn't care at all. She smiled and walked into my room, looking at me mischievously. "Are you jealous? I have good news for you. My engagement with Alexander is off. I'm not marrying him anymore. I only want to marry you." Having learned from her past mistakes, Veronica believed love shouldn't be hidden and must be expressed openly. But her confession didn't make me happy. Instead, I froze, my expression cold. "I'm not interested in your situation with Alexander," I said. "I'm about to marry Sarah, and I hope you can bless us." I threw on my jacket and walked out without looking back, no matter how much she called after me. As I reached the door, Veronica rushed forward, but my mom came out of the kitchen holding a glass of milk. "Veronica," my mom said calmly, "let's talk." Veronica paused and obediently followed her to sit by the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathed in the warm morning sunlight. My mom looked at her directly. "Veronica, do you like Daniel?" Veronica didn't hide it. She nodded confidently. "Yes, I like Daniel." My mom's expression grew complicated. "But I heard you were engaged just a few days ago. Daniel and Sarah are about to get married. What exactly do you mean by saying this now?" Veronica bit her lip, paused, then said firmly, "Auntie, my engagement with Alexander was a misunderstanding. I'll explain it properly later. Daniel and Sarah don't truly love each other. They can't get married. Daniel's wife can only be me." My mom, usually gentle, was angered. She slammed the table. "Outrageous! Do you think my son is someone you can summon and discard at will? Daniel and Sarah are very close now. If you have any sense, you should leave for North City immediately." Veronica wasn't intimidated. She smiled politely. "Auntie, I mean no harm. I just want to pursue my own love. If they're truly in love, as you say, then you have nothing to worry about, right?" With that, she turned and walked away, having made up her mind not to retreat this time. She would boldly express her love. She couldn't lose me. We were childhood sweethearts, the couple everyone admired. In the end, she believed we would be together. Just as she stepped outside, her phone rang. It was Alexander. His urgent voice came through. "Veronica, please help me. Loan sharks are at my door. They said if I don't pay, they'll cut off my hands. Please remember everything I've done for you. Can you give me 500,000? Veronica frowned. "Didn't I already give you 1 million? You spent it all." Alexander coughed. "It's my fault. I gambled again. I swear this is the last time." Her mood soured instantly. "That's your problem, not mine. I'm not your ATM. Don't come to me for money. And Daniel leaving has everything to do with you. Don't think I don't know your tricks. Instead of begging me, you should worry about how you'll deal with my revenge when I get back." She hung up. On the other end, Alexander cursed angrily. "That brainless love fool, who does she think she is?" The loan sharks beside him shot him cold looks. "You owe money and still act tough? Who are you planning to make pay?" Alexander dropped to his knees, begging. "Brothers, I was wrong. I wasn't talking about you." The loan shark sneered, pulled out a fruit knife, and waved it in front of his face. "Where's the money? I don't want excuses." Unable to pay, Alexander was beaten until he spat blood before they finally let him go. That evening, Sarah texted me saying she was still at the office, so I waited downstairs for her to finish work. After everyone else had left the company, Sarah finally walked out holding a stack of files. She had just started taking over the company and still had a lot to learn, so she had to bring a ton of paperwork home to study. When she saw me, she immediately smiled brightly. She asked, "What are you doing here?" I walked up naturally, taking the files from her hands and holding her hand with my other, gently saying, "As your boyfriend, it's perfectly normal for me to pick you up from work." Upon hearing this, Sarah's eyes lit up. She asked, "Does this mean you're accepting me?" I nodded, but then shook my head. I said, "I wouldn't say I'm accepting you, but I've realized that my heart can't help but beat for you. It's my honor that you want to be my girlfriend. I owe you a romantic confession ceremony." I knew I owed Sarah that, having been hesitant for so long. After dinner, we went to a movie, and then I took Sarah home as usual. When we reached the familiar bridge, we both froze in surprise at what we saw. The bridge was covered with bright red rose petals, and colorful lights hung on both sides with banners reading, "I love you," on every street lamp. A little girl ran up to us and handed me a bouquet of roses still covered in dew. As soon as I took the flowers, she quickly ran off. I was confused by the scene and instinctively handed the bouquet to Sarah. She took the flowers and smelled them, complimenting, "They smell so good. Is this your idea of a romantic gesture?" She smiled, feeling like the happiest woman in the world at that moment. The man she'd always loved was finally confessing to her. I glanced at the rose petals on the ground, then at Sarah, and shook my head in confusion. This wasn't me. I had no idea what was going on. Seeing me deny it, Sarah laughed. She thought that with the rose petals, colorful lights, and banners, I must have put a lot of effort into this. Since I was denying it, she assumed there was a bigger surprise waiting. She didn't want to spoil my intentions, so she pretended not to know. She said, "Well, in that case, let's walk across the bridge and see what's waiting for us." I nodded and took Sarah's hand as we walked across together. When we reached the end of the bridge, a huge screen appeared. It was playing a loop of my photos and various videos of me, playing basketball, running, accepting awards. Sarah couldn't help but joke, "Are you trying to show me your past, or are you trying to win me over with your good looks?" Just as she finished speaking, a sweet, playful voice rang out. "Daniel, we've always been good childhood friends. I've always known how much you care for me. Before I made a mistake and lost you, now it's my turn to be good to you and bring you back. I like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" Veronica, dressed in a white gown, held a bouquet of red roses and gazed at me lovingly. As soon as Sarah saw Veronica, the smile on her face disappeared. It turned out that this whole romantic setup was something Veronica had planned for me. She foolishly thought she was about to be happy. She had always known that I had a secret crush on her. Now, seeing the woman I loved confessing to me, she assumed I must be overjoyed. Thinking this, Sarah silently put down the roses she was holding and pulled her hand from mine. I sensed the shift in Sarah's emotions. Without hesitation, I took her hand again, holding it tightly so she couldn't pull away. I looked at Sarah, who seemed a little lost, and smiled. Then I raised our hands, still tightly entwined, so Veronica could see. I said, "Veronica, I don't know what kind of shock you've had, but I don't care whether it's because of Alexander or some unresolved feelings. I don't want to know. I only know that the person by my side now is the one I love, and I will protect her for the rest of my life with all that I am." Upon hearing this, Sarah's face brightened, her smile returning. Veronica, on the other hand, was in disbelief. She couldn't believe that I was rejecting her. Her eyes filled with tears as past memories flashed through her mind like a slideshow. With a trembling voice, she asked, "You've known her for just 2 days. How could you possibly like her? Even if you like her, it can't compare to the 20 years we've spent together, can it?" I looked at her coldly and replied, "We are just like siblings." Veronica held the bouquet to her chest, her eyes still brimming with tears, and looked at me desperately. She said, "You used to buy me crab roe soup dumplings every morning at the school gate. You used your scholarship to buy me the designer bags I liked. When I was bullied, you'd stand up for me, and when I cried, you were more heartbroken than I was. How can that just be sibling love? I don't believe it. You must like me. Don't marry her, okay? I know you're only marrying her to revive the family business. If it's money you need, I have it. I'll give you all the money my family has. I'll help you revive the family business." Veronica looked at me with hopeful eyes, wanting me to change my mind. Sarah, after hearing this, felt a pang of disappointment. She was self-aware enough to know that our relationship, having only begun a few days ago, couldn't possibly match the deep bond Veronica and I shared over 20 years. A large part of the reason I was willing to marry her was due to the support her family offered. Now that Veronica was willing to offer all her family's money to help me, Sarah was afraid I might waver. Sarah looked up at me, studying my expression, but she soon realized that I wasn't happy about Veronica's words. Instead, I was a bit angry. Seeing that I hadn't been swayed, Sarah's heart settled. I kept holding on to her hand tightly, offering her a sense of security. I turned to face Veronica, wanting to make things clear once and for all, especially in front of my fiancé, and put an end to this. I said, "I admit I liked you before." At these words, Veronica smiled, wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes. I continued, "But ever since you got a boyfriend, I've completely given up." That one sentence was like a final blow, pulling Veronica into the depths of despair. She shook her head, wanting to explain, "No, it's not like that. My relationship with Alexander isn't real. We're just—" Before she could finish, I interrupted her. "I've said it already. I'm not interested in your relationship. Veronica, why do you think I still like you now? All you've mentioned is how good I've been to you, all the things I've done for you. But what have you given me? What is there about you that's worthy of my love?" My words were cold and harsh, and Veronica broke down in tears. She opened her mouth to explain, but as the words were on the tip of her tongue, she realized that perhaps, as I said, it was true. For all these years, she had only enjoyed my kindness. She had been willful, spoiled, and hot-tempered, causing trouble wherever she went. In the end, it was always me who cleaned up her mess, solved all her problems, and she had only ever been a source of trouble, never bringing anything positive into my life. She really didn't deserve my love. Veronica soon realized the truth and stopped speaking. She looked at the hands of Sarah and me, tightly intertwined, and whispered, "Brother, I wish you happiness." With that, the roses she was holding fell to the ground, and she resolutely turned away. Despite the pain in her heart, she didn't look back. She was afraid she might not be able to stop herself and might try to take me away. Sarah bent down, picked up the roses, and handed them to me. In a soft voice, she said, "This bouquet was meant for you anyway. Take it." I lowered my head and gazed at Sarah, who was always smiling, and a pang of tenderness filled my heart. I pulled Sarah into my arms gently, saying, "Sarah, you're my fiancée. You don't have to be so understanding. You can get jealous, you can question me. I want to give you a sense of security." Upon hearing this, Sarah started to cry. She grasped my arm, sobbing, I'm afraid that one day you might suddenly not want me anymore." I gently patted her back, comforting her. "It won't happen. Trust me, now that I've chosen you, I'll always take care of you." I comforted Sarah for as long as she cried. I didn't know how long it passed, but eventually, through her sobs, Sarah fell asleep in my arms. With a soft smile, I gently picked her up and carried her home. I used Sarah's fingerprint to unlock the door, then carried her to the bedroom. After covering her with a blanket, I saw that she was sleeping soundly, and only then did I quietly leave. I hadn't realized that Sarah lived alone. She seemed so delicate and fragile, it was hard to imagine that she could take care of herself. What I didn't know was that although Sarah came from a good family, she had never received love from her parents. Not long ago, she had defied her parents' objections and insisted on being with me, which angered her father and mother. As a result, they had kicked her out, and she had to live on her own. When I returned home, I was surprised to find my mother sitting upright in the living room, waiting for me. I asked, "Mom, what's going on?" I had a bad feeling in my heart, as though something was about to happen. My mother looked at me seriously, her tone urgent as she said, "You and Sarah need to get married soon." She had noticed something off about Veronica recently, and after this morning's events, she was worried that delays might lead to more trouble. I lowered my head, deep in thought. I felt that Sarah didn't have a strong sense of security right now. Perhaps a romantic wedding would be more effective than any flirtatious words. With that thought, I nodded. Sarah had been busy with company matters and hadn't had much time to spend with me, so I focused on preparing a surprise for her. By 6 p.m., I went to pick Sarah up from work, and we had dinner, took a walk, and chatted. A month later, after Sarah's work had calmed down, it was just in time for the weekend. I secretly took Sarah to an open grassy area, covering her eyes the entire way, making her heart race with excitement. Once we stopped, Sarah softly asked, "Are we there yet?" I smiled and responded, "Yes, open your eyes." Sarah obediently opened her eyes, and before her stood a vast sea of ice-blue roses. Beneath her feet was a red carpet leading toward a flower path. Fireworks lit up the sky, spelling out, "Sarah, I love you," in brilliant colors. My voice echoed in Sarah's ear as I said, "Sarah, I can't deny it, my heart beats for you. You might find it hard to believe that I love you so quickly, but I just want to say love happens in an instant. Just like many years ago, you fell in love with me because of a single glance in a narrow alley. And I, on the night of September 10th at 11 o'clock, fell in love with you because of a single kiss." I looked at Sarah with deep affection, sincere and resolute, and said, "Sarah, will you marry me?" The gentle breeze by the river, the dazzling fireworks reflecting in the water, my vow resonating in her ears, it felt like a dream. Sarah, overjoyed, covered her face with her hands and quickly nodded. She said, "I do." 1 month later, in the most luxurious hotel in South City, The solemn and pure ivory white paired with elegant gold created an atmosphere of grace. Crystal chandeliers with intricate floral designs cast soft light, illuminating Sarah's custom-made wedding dress, making love seem to swirl in the golden glow. Sarah smiled at me, and every glance seemed to say, "I do." The guests were our close friends and family, all there to celebrate our union. As the wedding march began, the host's voice sounded, "Lady, no matter if he is rich or poor, do you promise to walk with him through life, never to part, and grow old together?" Happiness sparkled in Sarah's eyes as she urgently replied, "I do." The host turned to me, asking, "Sir, no matter if Sarah is rich or poor, do you promise to walk with her through life, never to part, and grow old together?" I smiled, my lips curving upward, and slowly opened my mouth to say, "I." However, before I could finish, Kevin suddenly ran up onto the stage, interrupting me. His expression was tense as he shouted, "Something's wrong." With that, Kevin firmly pulled me away. Seeing this, my mother immediately sprang to her feet. After comforting Sarah for a moment, she quickly followed us. I furrowed my brow and asked sternly, "What's going on?" "Today is my wedding day, the happiest day of my life. What could be more important than this?" This was the first time I was angry with my good friend. I always thought Kevin was a reasonable person, so I couldn't understand why he couldn't see the urgency of the situation. Kevin didn't argue with me but instead took my phone and held it up in front of me. Since my groom's outfit didn't have any pockets, I had placed the phone with Kevin. To my surprise, it was a threatening message from Alexander. He had sent a photo of Veronica, taped up and bound in an abandoned factory. The message threatened that I had 1 hour to pay him $5 million, or he would kill her. Kevin knew this was supposed to be the most important day of my life, but a life was at stake, and there was no other choice but to take this drastic measure. I took the phone and examined the photo closely. The fear and panic in Veronica's eyes didn't seem fake, this was real. My mother rushed over, hearing our conversation, and fell silent. It was indeed a tricky situation. I immediately dialed the number and spoke coldly. "Alexander, what kind of game are you playing? Isn't Veronica your fiancée? Kidnapping her to ask for money, are you out of your mind?" Alexander let out a strange laugh before calmly explaining, "Fiancé? Didn't she tell you it's all fake between us? She just wanted to test you and force you to confess." Hearing this, my heart tightened. I murmured, "She wanted to force me to confess. She likes me." Alexander's voice came again. He said, "I don't care about your love life. I just want the money. An hour from now, if you don't deliver $5 million to this factory, I'll kill her. Oh, and a little warning, don't even think about calling the cops. If you do, I'll make sure Veronica dies with me." With that, Alexander hung up. Kevin swallowed nervously, hesitated for a moment, and then asked, "Are you going to save her? But Sarah is still waiting for you up there." At that moment, Sarah appeared at the doorway, holding up her wedding dress. She had been standing by the wall and had overheard everything Kevin and I had said. Sarah smiled gracefully, tears still shimmering in her eyes. She tried to appear calm and said, "It's okay. Go save her. Life is more important than a wedding." Hearing this, my mother looked at Sarah with concern. Sometimes she felt that this child was too sensible for her own good. Meanwhile, Kevin, hearing Sarah's words, couldn't stop praising her for her grace, maturity, and understanding. He used nearly every complimentary word there was to describe her. I looked at her deeply, a sense of guilt swelling in my chest. Every woman dreams of wearing the most beautiful wedding dress, looking stunning, and marrying the one she loves on her wedding day. But now, I had ruined all of that for Sarah. Even though it wasn't my intention, I still couldn't escape being the one responsible. In the next moment, Veronica's terrified face appeared in my mind again. I rushed over and embraced Sarah, whispering in her ear, "Sarah, thank you. Please wait for me to come back. Wait for me to marry you." After that, I entrusted Sarah to my mother and ran out the door. After withdrawing $5 million from the bank, I drove to the abandoned factory. My phone rang. It was Alexander calling. I answered and held the phone to my ear. Alexander's voice came through. "I see you. I'll give you credit for being smart. You didn't bring anyone with you." Alexander was upstairs watching my every move. He continued, "Better stay calm. Everything you do is under my control. Now walk to your left all the way to the end, then open the door and come up to the 3rd floor." I followed his instructions, reaching the 3rd floor, where I saw Veronica tied to a pillar in the middle of the room and Alexander not far off, holding a fruit knife and waving it around. When he saw me, Alexander raised an eyebrow and laughed. "Getting married today, huh? Looking so formal." I glared at him, not wanting to say another word, and tossed the money toward him. "I've brought the money. Now release her." Hearing this, Alexander cautiously approached the money bag, checked it over, and seeing there was no trick, nodded. He said, "You can take her, but not right now. If I let you go first and you immediately call the cops on me, that would be a big problem." I gritted my teeth and coldly replied, "What do you want then?" Alexander stroked his chin and thought for a moment before saying, "Well, you go downstairs first. After I leave, you can come back up and untie her." I squinted and, without thinking, refused. "No. What if you hurt her while I'm gone?" Alexander, who was rejected, became agitated. He waved the fruit knife at me and shouted, "What gives you the right to negotiate with me? She's in my hands. I do as I please. Otherwise, I'll kill her." He aggressively pressed the fruit knife against Veronica's neck. A slight motion and blood would flow. Veronica looked at me in horror, tears streaming down her face. To ensure her safety, I could only nod and slowly take a step back. Only then did Alexander relax and lower the knife. Just then, a black figure suddenly dashed out from the stairwell. With swift movements, it pounced on Alexander. He was caught off guard, knocked to the ground, and the fruit knife flew several meters away. By the time the police arrived and cuffed him, Alexander was still shouting insults at me. "Damn you! You're a real piece of work calling the cops." I raised an eyebrow and smiled, shrugging helplessly. Everyone has their expertise. When it comes to professional matters, you need to leave it to the professionals. On my way to get the money, I had already called the police. Otherwise, withdrawing such a large sum of cash would have been a problem in itself. This was all part of the plan. To cooperate with the police, Veronica and I were called in to make statements. By the time we left the police station, it was already 2 in the afternoon. Alexander was charged with kidnapping and extortion. He had a criminal record for gambling, and with the additional charges, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. I breathed in the fresh air outside, unable to suppress a sigh. I thought the wedding must have already ended and Sarah must have gone home by now. Feeling my emotions, Veronica grabbed my arm and said earnestly, "Daniel, you like me and I like you. Since you missed your wedding with Sarah, how about this? Let's get married." "Okay." "You were willing to drop everything and save me. That shows you care for me, probably more than you care for her. You can't keep lying to yourself, and I can't either. Let's get married, okay?" I pulled my arm away and coldly said, "I saved you because you're my sister. Life is more important than the wedding. You only get one life, but a wedding can be rescheduled. Sarah also supports my decision to save you. She's half your benefactor. The things you just said, I hope that's the last time I hear them. I don't want to make Sarah sad." After that, I turned and walked to the car. Veronica watched me leave, her heart feeling like it was being torn apart. But she couldn't blame anyone but herself. She had pushed me away with her own hands. When I arrived at the wedding venue, the banquet hall was eerily silent. I nervously swallowed, feeling like my worst fear had come true. But then I quickly reasoned with myself. I had left my bride behind. What right did I have to ask everyone and Sarah to wait for me? I walked dejectedly into the hall. "You're back," Sarah's gentle voice sounded. Hearing that, my eyes lit up. I looked up and there she was, still wearing the white wedding dress, standing on the stage with all the guests present. I was a little surprised, confused as to what was happening. I asked, "What's going on?" Sarah smiled and replied, "To be honest, I told them that my sister had been kidnapped and my husband went to save her. So the wedding was delayed." I looked at the guests below the stage, then at Sarah, and my eyes welled up. How could she be so understanding? She had said all that to prevent others from criticizing me, even making it sound like she was helping save her sister. My heart melted in that instant, and I swore I would love Sarah for the rest of my life. The guests in the hall raised their thumbs and praised me. We understand, it's a life-or-death situation. You're a true hero. Since nothing's happening today, we can eat, drink, and enjoy watching your happiness. Host, what are you waiting for? Get on with it. The host, who had been frozen for a moment, finally came to his senses. He looked at me and said, Sir, do you take Sarah, whether in poverty or wealth, to be your lawful wedded wife, to love, cherish, and never forsake her, until death do you part? I took Sarah's hand and nodded seriously. I do. This time, no one interrupted us. We smoothly completed the wedding ceremony and exchanged rings. A round of applause followed, and amidst the cheers, we shared a passionate kiss. The following month, we went on a sweet honeymoon, traveling to different parts of the world to experience the local culture. Under the Eiffel Tower, Sarah finally confessed her secret. She said, Actually, on our wedding day, I was so scared you wouldn't come back. But you told me to wait, so I waited. Fortunately, you came back. A gentle breeze blew, lifting a strand of hair and brushing across my face. I tenderly stroked Sarah's cheek and seriously said, Actually, on our wedding day, I was also afraid that you wouldn't want to wait for me. But you waited, and I vowed to love you for the rest of my life. With that, we exchanged a smile and embraced each other. After the honeymoon ended, we returned to our normal lives. Sarah had just taken over the family business and was still learning the ropes. She had secretly married me without informing her parents, which infuriated them. They looked down on my family's company, which was on the brink of bankruptcy, and because Sarah insisted on marrying me, she faced constant pressure from some old, stubborn employees. When I found out, my heart ached, and I hugged her tightly, promising that I would build the law family business into the strongest it could be, so her parents would see that their daughter had made the right choice. 6 months later, Veronica returned to the northern city, but she was lost and disoriented. Lou's mother was also worried, but since it involved young love, there was little she could say. Instead, she sent Veronica a large sum of money and suggested she take a trip to clear her mind. Veronica aimlessly drove through different cities, unable to find any place that made her want to stay longer than a day. She visited various tourist spots, checking in like it was a task, sending photos to Lou's mother to reassure her. She realized that I had been right all along. She had become accustomed to demanding things, proud and rude, ignoring the feelings of those who truly cared for her. She couldn't go on like this. But my situation still haunted her. She often asked Kevin, Do you think if I hadn't listened to Alexander's advice and hadn't pretended to be his girlfriend, would I be with Daniel now? Kevin, seeing Veronica's disheartened state every day, felt a pang of sympathy. After thinking for a long time, he finally decided to tell her the truth. Kevin sent a message to Veronica. Actually, before you got together with Alexander, Daniel had already been preparing a romantic confession for you. But on the day he was going to confess, he was all excited, ring in hand, ready to find you, but when he did, he saw you with Alexander. Hearing this, Veronica suddenly remembered the small box Daniel had been holding that day. She couldn't believe it, covering her mouth in shock, and immediately called Kevin. She asked, Is this true? He was going to confess to me that day. Kevin took the call and calmly replied, Yeah. Veronica, suddenly overwhelmed with excitement, stammered, Then, so he loves me? Why didn't he want to be with me? She had confessed to him that her relationship with Alexander was fake, so why wouldn't Daniel accept her? There was silence on the other end for a moment. Finally, Kevin spoke up, Maybe life is like a drama, full of missed opportunities. When he thought you didn't love him, he forced himself to let go. Then he was healed by someone else and unknowingly fell in love with her. Everything's in the past now. Let it go. He advised, He's found someone who loves him more. You should wish him happiness. On the other end of the phone, Veronica's crying could be heard. She regretted what she had done and, at the same time, wondered if Daniel and she had really been together, maybe she wouldn't have been as happy as she was now. In terms of being a good wife, she knew she was no match for Sarah. After going through all these events, Veronica had grown a lot. After returning to the northern city, she learned to cook a few dishes from Lou's mother. She didn't want to be someone who only took from others. She also wanted to try and bring warmth to the people she loved. When Lou's mother came home and saw her daughter cooking, her smile nearly reached her ears. Veronica smiled and sat her mother down, serving her a few dishes. She said, "Mom, try this." Lou's mother eagerly picked up her chopsticks, tasted the food, and gave a thumbs up, praising, delicious. My daughter has grown up. Lou's mother looked at Veronica with a satisfied gaze. After everything that had happened, her daughter had become more mature, more caring for others, and she was genuinely happy for her. Another month passed, and with the financial support Sarah had given me, my business was thriving. I felt that after being married to Sarah for half a year, I had not yet met my father-in-law, which felt disrespectful. Sarah, too, was not welcomed by her family for marrying me. I had always felt bad about that. Now that my career was growing, I felt confident and wanted to take Sarah back to meet her parents. Driving a blue Ferrari to the Lee family villa, I was immediately hit with a heavy, solemn atmosphere. Sarah instinctively tightened her grip on my clothes. I turned to her and gave her a reassuring smile, holding her small, fair hand tightly in mine to give her a sense of security. I said, "It's okay, don't worry. I'm here. Everything's going to be fine." Hearing my gentle words, Sarah managed a weak smile, took a deep breath, and linked her arm with mine as we walked inside together. Though she was the daughter of the Lee family, the favored one who had grown up with attention, Sarah never liked this identity. The pressure of being the heir of the Lee family was immense. She had to learn all kinds of formalities. Every action had to be precise, as if measured with a ruler. She had to learn various talents: piano, guzheng, Chinese dance. Her parents demanded perfection in everything, and if she didn't do her best, she would be punished by not being allowed to eat for a day. Over time, Sarah began to feel that this so-called home was suffocating, nowhere near as happy as when she had been attending high school in the northern city. As we entered, we saw Mr. and Mrs. Lee sitting at the dinner table, eating quietly, with 4 nannies standing nearby, refilling their wine glasses. Dad, Mom, Sarah and I stood at the door for a long time, but they didn't acknowledge us. Sarah's face turned pale, and she pulled my hand, ready to turn and leave. She had already told them she would be coming back with me, but they still ignored us. Since they didn't show any respect, she felt there was no need to keep up appearances. Just as Sarah took a step toward leaving, I grabbed her hand and pulled her back. I looked at Mr. and Mrs. Lee and raised my voice. "I know you've never wanted to acknowledge me as your son-in-law because our law family's business is on the verge of bankruptcy. You think I'm not good enough for your precious daughter." Upon hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Lee stopped eating and put down their chopsticks. They coldly stared at me. Mr. Lee spoke first. "That's right. But our silly daughter is determined to be with you. Does that mean just because we don't approve of you, you're going to give her back to us?" I tightly grasped Sarah's hand and said firmly, "Sarah is my one true love, and I will never give up on her. This has nothing to do with being your daughter." As soon as I finished speaking, Mr. Lee slammed his hand on the table in frustration. He dismissed the nannies and scolded me harshly. "Unless you can become more successful than the Lee family, what makes you think you're worthy of marrying my precious daughter? Is it just because you have a small company worth only a few million?" Sarah wanted to speak up for me, but Mrs. Lee pulled her aside. She looked at Sarah and said earnestly, "Sweetheart, I know you truly love Daniel. But you've been pampered your whole life. If he doesn't become better than us, how can your father and I feel at ease giving you to him? Your father is only trying to push him a little. He doesn't really want to break you two apart. Otherwise, do you think we would have been so indifferent when you two got married?" When Sarah realized the good intentions behind Mr. and Mrs. Lee's actions, she was touched and shed tears. She embraced Mrs. Lee, feeling relieved. It turned out they did not love her, they just had been strict with her. On the other hand, facing Mr. Lee's rebuke, I set a goal for myself. I said, 3 years. Give me 3 years, and I will raise Law's market value to 500 million. After speaking, I took Sarah's hand and left. For the next 3 years, I worked hard every day, putting in extra hours and attending social events. Sarah was heartbroken for me and would always go home to plead with Mr. and Mrs. Lee. But Mr. and Mrs. Lee were very stubborn. They said this was my goal, and if I didn't achieve it, they wouldn't acknowledge me as their son-in-law. After 3 years of relentless effort, I finally increased Law's market value to 500 million and became the wealthiest man in the southern city. At last, Mr. and Mrs. Lee accepted me as their son-in-law. 2 years later, Sarah and I had a pair of adorable fraternal twins. On the day of the baby's full-month celebration, Veronica appeared uninvited, standing off to the side, quietly observing my happiness. Seeing me smiling so joyfully, Veronica couldn't help but tilt her head and smile as well. Such is life. When you miss an opportunity, it's as if you miss a lifetime. She took a deep breath, put on her sunglasses, and silently left. After the full-month celebration, Sarah glanced at the gift list and curiously asked, "Why is there an anonymous donation of 5 million on this list?" Hearing this, I walked over, glanced at the list, and thought for a moment before calmly saying, "It must be from our sister." Upon hearing this, Sarah laughed and cuddled up in my arms, holding me tightly. Our babies were peacefully sleeping in the crib beside us.